It's hard to believe another week has gone by. This week's episode is brought to you by Brondo, the kernel patch eliminator. Not really, although it feels like that when you're on sleep deprivation. I'm using a Razer Blade 18 that I'm going to review, or the review... No, the review's not out yet. The review's almost out. The laptop is out. You can buy it. It is an 18-inch laptop with a 5090 laptop, 5090, 24 gigs of VRAM, Core Ultra 9 290HX. As configured, I think there's 64 gigs in it right now. Don't believe them. It is upgradable to 128 gigs. They say officially 96 gigs, but it's doable. Show notes this week. I guess we can get started. There's more kernel updates, 2 in fact, since last week, and also cPanel. cPanel continues to be a vibe-coded mess. They released a patch. The patch was incomplete. Had to release another patch. Then they released an update that changed the way their update monitoring thing works without telling anybody. And this is really not how you run your operation. It's not. So what's happening is people with access to basic AI tools are able to scan over things on the cPanel server and find lots of things, which is something that cPanel, being a well-funded, venture capital, they have enough money to hire smart people. They should have been doing that. This is maybe also a lesson for some of the rest of you. Is like, if you have a large code base that a lot of customers depend on, maybe use some of the tools to help you find things in them before the bad guys do, because I assure you the bad guys are doing the same thing, so you should probably also do the same thing. And if your executive is using the increased productivity to cut heads and lay people off, that's not good. The theme this week is the future belongs to those who build value, not those who extract it. And I think AI is going to make that more true than ever, because, look at the venture capital value extraction all the way back to Sears. And we as a society should reject that with as much fervor as any of the fervor that we're seeing in any other context, which is amazing. The fervor, not the value extraction. The value extraction is horrifying. Project updates. Simon, sensor monitoring. It continues to take off, and I've got some out-of-tree updates that I'm going to try to merge back into the main production. It's sensor monitoring, and it works really well on the Razer Blade 18 laptop, which was great. Not an entirely unexpected surprise, but small wonders will definitely do. Also, SRIOV, if you've been following the SRIOV thread on the Level 1 text forum, B50 kind of does work with more than 2 virtual functions now. But you got to have the very latest kernel, and I'm not sure about the firmware. I'm not sure. I'm trying to replicate. You just got to read the thread. I'm trying to replicate the situation that one of our forum users created on this Mal7 Hail. I don't know. Thanks. When you use a B50 to create more than 2 virtual functions, it also gives you control of the VRAM. But a certain amount of VRAM has to be reserved for the host. You see, this is kind of a weird SRIOV setup, because this is a GPU where you can still use the external outputs, but then you also have virtual functions. And Intel is a little unusual in that respect. If you think about the VDI solutions, in an enterprise context, that has never been a thing. There was a diagnostic output on the AMD, W9700, that with a certain driver you could use as a display output to debug things, but that was never officially supported, and it was always weird having the DisplayPort connector behind a vent where you couldn't physically plug things into it unless you took off the expansion bracket. Or maybe that wasn't how it was in production. I don't know. I only got Amazon cast-off servers, so we'll see. But 3 virtual functions allocated with 4.5 gigs of VRAM on that card and 2.5 gigs of RAM for the physical function on the host. On B50, working, but more importantly, stable, running 3D workloads. The other side of that enchilada is that you get code 43 in Windows for driver support, and the Intel team has acknowledged that. There is a link to the ticket for that that Intel's working on. But the reality is that, at least the code 43 errors that I've encountered have been down to whether or not you are in a hypervisor. The Intel team might not understand that some people on Linux are hiding the fact that they're in a hypervisor, because it seems like if the Intel driver detects that if it's in a hypervisor, it works correctly and you don't get code 43. But if it doesn't detect that it's in a hypervisor, you get code 43. And the reason that you would want to run a VM such that it's hard to detect if you're in a VM is game anti-cheat. So there's a lot of users on our forum that are wily in the ways of virtualization, and it's like, yes, I am playing Fortnite in a virtual machine, but you have to take a lot of steps to hide the virtualization and hide the fact that you're in a VM in order to virtualize. Which, by the way, none of this has ever stopped any cheaters. The people that are actually determined to cheat, this doesn't stop them or do anything really, even to slow them down. It just annoys people that actually want to play Fortnite and a bunch of other games that have overly aggressive anti-cheat. In other security news, there is also an Nginx exploit, which is fairly serious. Everybody should update their Nginx and their Nginx proxies and their ingress proxies. Your home lab stuff, if your home lab stuff is naked on the internet, there's never been a better time to update. Half the internet was down yesterday, GitHub and everything else, into the wee hours of the morning. I also have some links in here for the show notes, like somebody is getting clued into the using AI as a teacher instead of a tool. It's like, I need to understand this thing. Give me the thing. It's like, oh, I know Kung Fu. You can basically do that. There's a GitHub repository where someone is trying that, and I think that'll be really, really pretty good. There's also a message from the president of MIT, which is an interesting. It's like he talks about talent pipelines. The talent pipeline stuff for what he's talking about is a thing that I'm interested in, which is how do we mine society for more students that are doing things and sort of, bring them up and do that sort of thing. I would say that as far as talent pipelines go, that for the children of America, limited as they may be in number, this should see a little bit more effort put toward recruiting folks that exist domestically that may be able to go into material science and all this other kind of stuff. Because the MIT person sort of talks almost antiseptically, I would describe it, about being a talent pipeline for, and if you connect the dots there, I would say commercialization, like commercializing the talent, like taking the raw, unpolished masses. Now he's talking about bringing in international students. I'm talking about scouring everywhere, because you never know, with like the raw clay, and probably you should start earlier than high school even. Like maybe freshmen in high school and talent and outreach. And so yes, this will change some things structurally. But also, if you have those precocious students that are self-motivated, then they will be able to use tooling better than ever. It's like, oh, all of the knowledge is on the internet. Well, not really. You have to do a lot of work. The barrier to entry for the knowledge is lower than ever, but also the ratio of good knowledge to terrible and wrong knowledge is kind of out of balance. It's like if somebody bothered to publish a book, then but technology may help those students, and so I think there's something there, and I just wanted to share it because it deserves some thought. And also I like the AI as teacher, because I always wanted to build the Vulcan education pods from Star Trek, and I might do a video on doing exactly that. Also, there's a fun project for like if you are into local AI. I'll just do a quick plug for the Andy 64. That's his name. I got nothing to do with that. Find the local LLM that actually runs on whatever your hardware is. So like you run that, you can see your hardware, you tell it what your hardware is, and then it'll tell you what your options are, which might be terrible or good. I don't know. Speaking of terrible human beings, the laws from the OpenAI trial are very. Everybody should read that and be aware of things. After reading the transcripts from the OpenAI trial, I am certain that new technical tools that are being built right now and have been built are going to displace bad management. There is no, like, the situation where a CEO or an executive makes 1,000 times what an average worker makes. I think very soon gone are those days, and those folks don't realize it yet, but they're facing more of an existential threat than rank and file programmers or anybody that in the popular zeitgeist, I think, is threatened to be replaced, because you can fire them, but it's not going to make up the work that is being done. And I think that those folks that are doing that are hollowing out their company and eliminating the thing that provides value. And that is, bottom line, the best opportunity for open source. Look at the interest in open source globally. Nobody is interested in being locked up in something like the cPanel situation or the Microsoft Office situation, or really any complicated, expensive software as a service platform. Generally, I don't think people have a problem with software as a service. It's just that when the value you get for the service is so far removed from anything else, that's when people sort of sit up, take notice, and begin to make plans for change. So like if you look at the cPanel situation, like people that have used and depended on cPanel for years, they have a lot of inertia. And so if you have a venture capitalist that comes in, or private equity or whatever, comes in and buys them up, they can just raise the prices of whatever, because a certain number of customers are going to have trouble getting off of the product. But by the time they do, the venture capitalists will have extracted all of the money. And it didn't matter about the long term, they just wanted the short term gains. That was true of Sears. It's true of VMware. That's the modern business playbook. Whether or not you want to argue that leads to collapse or not, it probably does, certainly collapse for those companies. But I think it's going to create, like from the ashes of destruction, will spring up a lot of folks that understand the problems that they're trying to solve, and they use modern tools to build the replacements. And then we see things like Germany investing $1.3 million or 1.3 million euro in KDE. This is our future. This is where these things go. It's like, I need an office suite that is not going to threaten to hold me hostage in 2 years. Open source. Open source will always take care of you. And this is why open source has completely taken over the universe everywhere except consumer and commercial, because consumer and commercial have been, if we describe it this way, the least organized and the least well put together in terms of, oh, we should respond to the threat, versus on the commercial side. On the commercial side, immediately you had the top 10 companies in the world form Open Compute. And they formed Open Compute because companies that provided their gear were trying to hold them hostage in exactly the same way. It's a microcosm of the exact same bad behaviors. It's just at a scale that the large companies could organize and respond to. It's like, no, we're not going to be locked into your proprietary network operating system. We're going to do everything that we need under the Open Compute umbrella, and if you want to sell us gear, you're going to have to sell us gear that meets the Open Compute specification. And it's not like the Open Compute specification doesn't necessarily translate into consumer friendly. In fact, I would say that those are opposite ends of the spectrum. But it gives you the thin end of a wedge to get from here to there. So a lot of that is to say that open source is the future because you can't retroactively rug pull the open source aspects of it. Gamers Nexus and Louis Rossmann supporting Orca Slicer because Bamboo Labs is like, oh no, we're gonna cordon this off. We're gonna go with it. This is the standard playbook. This is really not a lot different than what DJI did with the hobby drone market in order to completely take over the universe. Arguably some of the Bamboo Labs products are sold at a loss. It's like, it's such a good product. How is it so cheap? Why can't Prusa match the pricing? Or, that's a common complaint. But what if it is subsidized? What if it is sold at a loss? What if it is done that way in order to capture the market? But capturing the market on the hardware side is not enough. You also have to capture the market on a software side. All of these things are the same fable, just with different characters, some different words, but it's the same story. And if you see that and you understand that for what that is, and you're a builder and you can build, you see things in your mind and you can bring them into reality, the future is going to be yours, because wholesale, that is the rejection I think we're seeing from everybody. And that is exciting. And that's not necessarily a Linux thing, but Linux is driving this philosophy, and I love it. That's great. And that's all I got for this week. Project updates and everything else. I'm going to be at Dell Tech World next week, so if you're going to be at Dell Tech World, let me know. I'm really just kind of like snooping around on some of the technology. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to look at some things at enterprise scale, look at some things that Dell has in mind to ease the suffering of everybody that has to manage infrastructure in this crazy time that we find ourselves in. But yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what we're doing for the episode next week. We might not have an episode next week, or if I do, it'll have to be from Dell Tech World. So we'll see. Razer Blade 18, look for that review. And our 10 gig, it doesn't have 10 gig Ethernet. I've got this WIS DPI. Jeff Geerling reviewed this, but this is an aluminium 10 gigabit USB-C. I was looking for this at Computex last year. If you follow our content for a long time, I literally made a video that is like, this is so obvious, why doesn't this exist? Here it is. It works much better than the built-in 2.5 gig on this fabulously expensive Razer Blade 18 laptop. So, if you need 10 gig, you can do 10 gig, and it works. All right. If I missed anything, or you want to participate, there is an audience participation aspect of this program in the forum, in Linux Weekly, in that section. So you should check that out. I'm Wendell, this is Level 1. I'm signing out, and that's where I'll be. All right. See you later.